that fear of unfulfilled potential, that scares me. I went with one guy, paid him some money, didn't work out for me. Went to the second, didn't really work out. Third guy changed my life, right? So I guess that's how I got into property. I am not pleased with how the system works in favor of the tenant, because I can't just walk into a supermarket today, take whatever I want and walk out and tell the guy, hey, this is a civil matter. You wanna do something about it? Take me to court. It's stealing. So how is it fair for a tenant to take my property, live in it, appreciate the roof and shelter I've given them, and have everything in working order for them, and them not pay me my rent?
Mars, at the tender age of 26, you've done a lot of different things in property in a short 5 years. So things from rent-to-rent developments, HMOs, refurbs, setting up a letting agency, setting up an estate agency as well. And you've only been in the UK less than 10 years.
That's right.
So what is it that got you started in property, and how is it that you've accelerated so quickly?
I think it all comes down from hunger.
Okay.
And a lot of people have different reasons from where that hunger comes from. And don't get me wrong, you meet different people and they will define hunger differently. People will say, I'm so hungry, I want to do so much in life and all. But a person who's super hungry, I think they will link that to how urgent and how quick they want to accelerate that. To give you an example, if you were to call me at 1 a.m. tomorrow morning and tell me, hey, Abbas, I've got an idea where you could make $1 million a month, let's meet. I'm not going to turn up, open my diary and tell you, Saj, I'm available next week at 2 p.m. Let's do it. I'll tell you, Saj, I'm coming to your place now.
Yes.
Let's figure that out now, because it's urgent. It's what hunger is. So some people have different reasons. For me, I guess it's also from my background. My father passed away at a very young age, so we lost a lot of it. Coming to UK, you're starting afresh. You see people have achieved things and you know you have that potential. And I think a lot of that comes from childhood, how you brought up, and entrepreneurship running in the family. So it's that idea saying that I can do it. That fear of unfulfilled potential, that scares me.
Yes.
And that is what hunger I would define. And that's what accelerates. That's what the acceleration is for me, that unfulfilled potential. It's quite scary for me.
That's really interesting. It's a really interesting concept, because I think it's something that drives many people. Many people don't understand necessarily what it is that drives them. Do you think there was a particular thing that happened, a defining moment that made you think, actually, I need to make a difference to your life, you're the one in control? Or do you think it's something that evolved over time for you?
That's an interesting question. I think that I look back, there was a time I was doing a placement year with a corporate company.
Yeah.
It was a kind of company that's billions of pounds worth. And, you go up the corporate ladder, people who join the company, they want to retire in that company. So I was having a conversation with my colleague at the time, and we were talking about my manager's manager. Because it was a large corporate ladder, you'd have a manager, where's a manager, where's a manager.
Okay.
So they've got band D until band A, and then you've got the board of directors, right? So I was having a conversation with my colleague at the time, and I was like, our boss's boss, how much do you think he earns? So he goes like, he must be earning about 70 grand a year. I'm like, 70 grand a year? And he's been working for this company, his whole life? He's about to retire? That's it? He's given like 30 years to this company and 70 grand? So the guy turns to me and like, Abbas, I don't think you understand what 70 grand a year is. And I'm like, is it really though? And since then I got to know the idea that the perspective shift was already there, that, okay, if I want to make money, it's not going to be through this corporate ladder.
Yeah.
It's not the way through.
Yeah.
Then it was, okay, if this is not the way through,
Yes.
what is? And I was just trying to figure out, because I didn't have anyone to guide me, right? It's different. You go to one mentor, like people talk about mentorship. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? A lot of people are getting scammed. I keep telling them that you might take risks with 10 different mentors. 8 of them will screw you over and you'll lose your money. But 1 might work or 2 might work, and that will change your life. I do believe in that, because that's what happened to me. I went with one guy, paid him some money, didn't work out for me. Went to the second, didn't really work out. Third guy changed my life, right? So I guess that's how I got into property.
Okay.
Just figuring out what it is. I got into stocks first, and I thought I'll get into second-hand clothing business, different types of things. Yeah. When I found property, I just fell in love with the idea of it.
What was it about property that was so more appealing than some of the other things you'd looked at or considered?
See, when there's a downturn, whether there's a downturn or not a downturn, people will always need a roof over their head. So the idea of property is not something that just come up now. Like second-hand clothing, it might just have come up now, right? People buy in bulk now, try sell it on eBay. eBay was not there hundreds of years ago. So property has been there since Adam, perhaps, right? So that concept has made a lot of people very wealthy. People are always going to need a roof over their head. So that demand is always there. Then comes the idea of supply. UK has a massive shortage of housing already. Past decade, they've been trying to build, what, I think about 300,000 homes. They don't even meet half of that.
Never met.
So I already know demand is there. Supply, limited. If I can get in, it's a win-win. You can see the property, you can feel it, you can touch it, you know it's there. And it appreciates in value over time while you enjoy the rental income. I think these are all good points and checks for me.
Okay. In terms of strategy, then, are you somebody that likes to buy and then hold to keep that property for the long term?
Yeah.
Or do you like to kind of offload property as quick as you can?
So for me, initially, it was all about cash flow. Yeah. To an extent where I'm living comfortably. But that cash flow for a person who started for 5 years is not going to make him wealthy at once, right? So I've come to a point now where I think I'm going to put a pause with cash flow and I'm going to try and flip as well if the deals are good enough to flip. But not that the ones that are already there in the portfolio for rental, I'm not going to flip those, no. Because a lot of it also comes down to interest rates, right? At the moment, interest rates are quite high, right? We're looking at 4.5% being the base rate. If you went back in COVID, that was 0.1%. So there are some deals that you see, for example, you'll see investors buying buy-to-let properties in the city center. And that's giving, if they were to buy those properties outright with cash, they would get what, 5-6%? But the base rate is 4.5. If they buy using mortgages on that deal already, it's going to cost them 7-8%. So it's not profiting. If they're paying 7% to the lender and only getting 6% here, where's the profit? It's not there. So it comes down to that, what ROI is the property giving me on this rental income? Because I know interest rates will drop. It's not going to be like that. If you look in history, the last time interest rates were this high was in 2008. I think it was at 5.25%. And even now, for example, a year ago, the question you asked me, whether flip or rent, we were looking at a deal. We did the property up, we wanted to flip it. We're thinking, okay, why don't we put it under a mortgage? So we thought, okay, let's approach the lender. We approached Together Commercial Finance. They offered us 9% fixed at the time because there's an element of commercial to the property. 9% fixed, or I think it was about 3.5% plus base rate. Now, at that time, the base rate was at 1% or 1.25. Yeah? So that skepticism was still there. What will happen to the interest rate? So I did my stress test to push it to 3.5%. Today, we're at 4.5%. So that element of risk is there, saying that, okay, when you're stress testing, how far can you push this up? Because you've got different buyers who don't use mortgages. They might just want a cash on cash 10% ROI. They're happy with it. So it depends on that circumstances. If I was to sell it, am I getting a better profit here, profit margin? Or if I was to rent it, what's the profit margin here? If I was to sell it and I'm making 25% profit, if I was to rent it and I'm making 20% on a mortgage yearly, I'd rather rent it. So there is that element of differentiation that comes in whether you want to sell or you want to rent.
Yes. I tend to take an approach on property whether we buy something to keep or we're buying this to sell, and they don't mix. It's a case of they're separate strategies, separate models. I heard someone years ago say something to me which I thought was really interesting. They said that when they're looking to sell property, they're thinking, what's the rental profit I would get in a year's rental profit? Then I times that by 10. If I could get 10 years profit now by selling it, then it makes no sense just to sell it. Which I thought was an interesting way of looking at it. And you're quite right in what you're saying that, there'll be some people, for example, purchasing with cash, some people purchasing with mortgage. You can't really compare those two people's the outcome because they have a different approach, and the reasoning why they would buy and what they're trying to achieve will be different. So you can't really compete in the sense of what they're doing. You just got to look at, does it work for you?
True.
And so what do you think is with the state of the market at the moment, what do you think is going to be the opportunities in the next year or so as we're still in this slightly uncertain time?
It's a very interesting question because it's something that I gave a lot of thought to myself, because I work with a lot of investors, right? We find deals where there's enough on the table for the both of us. You can't approach an investor who has an expectation of, let's say, 15%, and you find a deal that's giving in 15% only. Where isn't it for me? So I've given it a lot of thought because it's the kind of people I work with.
Yes.
In this current market now, I think it's a buyer's market now, right? But it's so important as well to pick the right properties to buy. If you're going to try buy a house where your whole source of income is dependent on one person and your interest rates are already so high and there's an existing tenant in place thinking you're getting a below market value deal, it's not really, it's not a deal that I would try get into now. For me, it's always been blocks of flats. For the current market that I look at, it's only developments, properties that I can add value to, refurbish, or it's extremely below market value. Like I'm talking significant market value, like 50, 70%. And you will find that in the market today because there are people, tired landlords who haven't known how to manage their properties well, and they're not able to increase their rents and the interest rates are already so high, it's putting them in a very difficult situation. We were just having a meeting a couple days ago in Manchester with the receivership.
Okay.
There's been a landlord. We've been negotiating with this deal for the last 6-7 months. Right. We're trying to find the right point to make it work because we're still not there yet. But I think we might just get there. This guy owned a block of 91 flats. So this is 66 two-bed apartments. The rest are one-bed. There's 2 elevators in there. The structure's already there. The apartments are there, the kitchen units are there, bathrooms, it's all there. All it needs is a rip out and refurb, but the plumbing sector, it's all there. The value of it, conservatively, you're probably looking at about £9.1 million. That's 91 flats, say 100,000 each flat, right? Good location as well, sea view. The guy could not manage the property as well, started facing voids.
Okay. So they're operational?
It was,
okay.
Before it went to receivership.
Right.
Yeah. Guy could not manage the property, started facing voids. With voids, you can't make your mortgage payments. It's what happened with this guy.
Right.
Was about to go bust.
Okay.
What ended up happening is someone said, okay, I'll take over the whole building, turn it into a care home. He removed all the tenants. Okay. The deal didn't go through. Now we're sitting with an empty property. Couldn't afford to make the mortgage payments. Now it's with the receivers.
Okay.
So this guy is willing to accept 4 million today for a building that's worth 9 million. And you can move on with it.
Yes.
So we're trying to go in at a lower price because we appreciate the amount of work that needs to go into the property.
Yes.
So we're somewhere around the 2.5 mark. Yeah. So if you're putting a 1 million or say 1.5 into the property, that's 4 mil. Cash on cash, you're already making 100%. Now, if you were to leverage debt, which is another thing I love about property, if you were to leverage debt, you're making about 400% on there. If you were to put in 30% of the value only to purchase the property.
What type of return do you typically try to look to achieve when you're looking at a deal and you're thinking, okay, what return are you wanting to try and achieve from that?
So if I'm trying to do a refurbishment to rent, like if I'm looking up north, then I'm not looking up north to sell.
So it's for income there.
Income there because the yields there are just so beautiful. If I'm looking at places like Birmingham, then it's that moment that if I'm buying a property in Solihull, do I really want to rent there if the yield's going to coming to be 4%? So that's to sell.
The values are higher and the rent, so reducing the return.
Exactly. So for me, coming back to your question, what sort of profit I'm looking for? If it's up north, then I want to refinance and pull all my funds out and not leveraging it to 75-25 also. Ideally, you want to play around 65-35.
Okay.
Maximum push it to 70-30. But around that, leveraging that, I want to be able to pull all of it out.
Right.
That's the kind of deal I'm looking for.
So in that example then, what I guess you're looking for is where there's substantially below market value, say 30% below market value. So then when you're refinancing that property, you're pretty much getting all your investment back out, or you're adding some value to those?
It's all added value.
Okay.
Because to find a deal, the level of acceleration that I want to go with, I'm not trying to find 3 deals a year and be satisfied. I'm trying to get to 10 deals a year. Hopefully this year we might be crossing 6 to 7. Hopefully with the way things are going. But my target is 10. So if I'm trying to find a property where the investor is giving 30-35%, I might just get 1, 2, maybe if I'm lucky 3. But if I'm trying to find rundown blocks of flats, big ones, then you'll find so many of them. And it's going to be so good. You'll find competition when it comes to deals like that, but you want competition because that just tells you it is a good deal. And then you want to try find a way why you stand out and why the vendor should sell it to you.
What is it about apartments that appeals to you, the blocks of apartments?
Big 2 reasons, I suppose. First one, houses. I just don't like it because your whole source of income is dependent on one person.
Okay.
The main source guy loses his job or starts to become difficult with you. You're in a very bad pickle. Secondly, with houses, the other thing I don't like, it's just not worth the effort. If I'm driving, let's say, all the way up north, that's me driving 2 hours to go, 2 hours to come back. I have to go there weekly. And if I'm just doing a house, when I refinance, my profit's what, £300 a month? Is it really worth all that effort if I'm just going to make £300 a month to drive all the way there? I might as well look around my neighborhood. So houses is that. The other problem about houses is that the appreciation of the property, the value of that is dependent solely on the neighborhood. So if you can't expect to buy a house in Tyseley today in Birmingham and expect that in 2 years it's going to be valued 700,000 or £1 million. You just can't. It's Tyseley. You can't expect that. But in Solihull, you can easily expect it. So it's all solely dependent on the neighborhood. With blocks of flats, it's not like that. It's all on the yield. So if I can increase the rental income by, let's say, £100 a month on a block of 20 flats, that's £2,000 every month that I can increase. That's £24,000 a year that I can increase. If you do just say a 10% cap rate, I've increased the value of the property by £240,000.
Yes. So just to clarify for somebody who might be watching or listening to this and maybe lost on the numbers a little bit. So what we're saying essentially is you're taking a block of apartments, the rental on it might be low. So when you're purchasing it at a lower price. Then you're improving the property, plus you're now tenanting it at a higher rent. Now, because the income has increased significantly, effectively a multiple of that income is how the property is being valued. So it'd be worth significantly more than what you started with.
Exactly. And I'm being super conservative with what I'm saying. 10% cap rate. It's not somewhere you can just so easily find. 24,000 on a 7% cap rate. So that is the beauty of blocks of flats, that you can increase the value of the building so significantly. And also you've got the advantage, if 2 tenants out of 20 are not paying you, it's okay. You still got 18 who are going to pay you. You're still going to make your mortgage payments and you're going to sleep peacefully at night. So that is the advantage and beauty about blocks of flats.
So what do you see as the strategy for you going forward in the next 2 or 3 years?
It's all refurbishments, developments for me. I want to try move from refurbs into major developments. Just simply because for refurbs, I'm struggling to find many deals of more than 10 apartments. That's 91 I told you about. First time in 5 years I've come across a deal like that. So hopefully I try not to lose that kind of deal because it's such a good one. It's off market. Not many people know about it, right? But with developments, it's easier to find a block of land, a piece of land where you can get planning permission, or you can apply for planning permission to get 80 apartments or 100 apartments, and you can start building and selling off plan. So ideally, that's what I'd hope to transition towards, but not leaving refurbs, because refurb is the cash flow. You never want to stop the cash flow. So I want the cash flow. That will be the refurbs that always goes on. But majority of my time to be invested into developments.
Bigger projects.
That's where I hope the transition to come towards.
And do you think that with the market still being uncertain at the moment, and let's say prices maybe even going to slow down, do you think it's timing wise, it's is the right time to do that? Developments.
I'll tell you the story of Ray Dalio. Have you heard of Ray Dalio? This guy.
Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio, right? Interesting fact about this guy, somewhere around the 1980s, he lost all his wealth, right? Because he had started a hedge fund and he thought that America was going to go down. So he gathered all the people around him, all the investors, to say, we're going to put money against this economy to fall. And they put all their money there. But the opposite happened. Market went up. He lost all his money, all his wealth, had to let go all his stuff. He says he didn't have money to pay his staff while letting them go as well. So he was broke, homeless type of broke. Then he was thinking, all my indicators indicated that the market was going to collapse. What happened here? Why did it not collapse? Because common sense dictated with this circumstance, this incident happening, the market was supposed to collapse. What happened? He came to realize the different types of cycles that we go through in this industry, right? We have this cycle that comes in every 10 years, like we experience in the property market. You've got other cycles that take place every 25, 30 years. And you've got other cycles that take place once in a lifetime. But the problem is with the cycles that have taken place in other people's lifetime, we don't know about because we don't look into history much. And we don't know what consequences they face and what lessons they learned. So what this guy decided to do is go back 500 years in history and learn all about what really made, what gave rise to world's leading powers, reserve currencies, what caused the fall of them. He studied the Roman empires, the Chinese dynasties. He studied all of that. He came to realize with, like, for example, the Dutch guilders, they were the Dutch. They were the first to become the world reserve currency. And how they came in place He studies that so he can implement that, right? Coming to the question about the interest rates. Now, he studies that. He sees that with the Dutch, they developed a mindset of saving money, but not saving money to just hoard and just wait for a rainy day. No, not that. Save money and invest into education.
Right.
But not the education that we have today in our society, in the educational system, where you have a professor teaching business, but he doesn't know anything about business or has never done anything like that. They were teaching education that was encouraging kids, youth to have strong work ethic, strong determination, civility, to work with each other, that kind of stuff. And it wasn't just in the schools. It was outside as well, to train these guys into becoming something else. So with that came productivity. Now, that kind of productivity, that the Dutch were the first to invent the stock exchange. Okay. They made their ships even stronger to go further for trade. So with high productivity like that came a lot of money. With so much income came that military and security that they managed to develop for themselves. And automatically with that, they became the world reserve currency. So Ray Dalio studied all of that, and including what caused them to fall. Because we all know, tough times create tough men. Tough men create soft times. Soft times create soft men. Soft men create tough times. And it's just a cycle that goes on. And eventually, they fell after a couple of cycles. I think it took 250 years before they fell as well. Coming to the interest rates now, this guy studied his history like that, is worth what, 19.1 billion today? But he was nothing in 1980s, just studying history. If we study history for property, yes, interest rates have been high, but they always do drop as well. Now, when I'm looking at the market now, I'm not looking for properties that are houses that I can rent at 7-8% either. I'm looking for those massive below market value deals or refurb schemes that I know that, okay, today maybe my ROI is not so good, but what if I was to stress test it, and what if I was to test it at my mortgage being at 0.1%, base rate being 0.1 or 0.5 or 2%? The cream is so there, it's so good. So, and those refurb developments are so easy to get now, because those guys who are on a bridge, or those guys who are on who had derelict properties, like, the bridge that I was just talking about, if they were on a bridge and they can't afford to pay it, they're just letting those deals go.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more of those rundown properties in the market now than I was, let's say, 1.5, 2 years ago, when the market was just skeptical, because the base rate is just so high now.
Yes. So do you think with the number of people leaving the market as well, like landlords in pain, and they are exiting the rental market, how do you think that's going to affect the rental side then, on the other side, from a tenant perspective? You run a letting agency as well. How do you see that? Well,
actually, I've been so surprised and shocked with how the rental market has evolved.
Crazy.
Because a 2-bed that in a very good location, newly developed, maximum it could touch was £950 to £1,000. Super good, spacious, not 650 square feet, because that's the standard 2-bed they make. You're looking at about 750, 800. You might touch £1,150 a month. Today, same property goes at 1,600 to 1,800 a month.
Yeah.
So that just tells you that the property market just cannot collapse because of the supply and demand. If the landlords are going to struggle, they're not going to take the pain themselves. They're going to have to pass it on to someone.
Yes.
And it's just unfortunate with how the system has been developed, that it's always that last person at the bottom of the food chain is the one that gets hit the most, because it's not like their salary has gone up by 2 times or 3 times, but the rental payments almost have.
But do you think it's sustainable? Like, so you give the example of £1,000 to £1,800, for example. The rents have increased so significantly, and the wages haven't really increased in line with that. There may be slight increase, but certainly not that sort of level. Do you think the tenants can maintain that sort of affordability, or do you think it's a bit of a ticking time bomb?
I feel, in my opinion, it seems like a ticking time bomb, because I was just having a conversation with our cleaner in the office building, and she's telling me, it's not like you have increased my salary that much, or the other guys I work with, but my rent is going up by 400 or 450 pounds. I can't afford it.
Yes.
So people are struggling. I know that, I can see that firsthand, but they don't really have a choice for now. There are a lot of court cases also going on, people falling into arrears and all that kind of stuff. But it's just how it is now. I do think it's going to improve. It cannot sustain like this. I do think it will drop. I think what the inflation has now come to, I think last I saw was about 8.5% from 10% when I saw it a couple of months ago. So I think it is dropping.
Starting to drop.
It is. I know the interest rates will slightly still go up, but they will come back down, because this is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
The housing market, for it to collapse within UK, would be a big hit on the government, because to attract international investors is one of the big criterias and big advantages the UK government has for how strong their property market is.
Yeah, property is always considered very safe in this country, which is why we see a lot of international money, especially in London, coming from overseas here. It's a safe place to park the money's safe there. And sometimes that's why the rental yields are so low, because the people parking the cash, they don't really care about the return. They just want to make sure the money's safe.
It's true.
In terms of where it is.
It's true what you say. If you look into Harrods, I think it's owned by the Qatari government, if I remember correctly. The yield.
Al-Fayed, is this older, or I'm not sure?
I'm not sure, but maybe they might have. But some time ago, I saw the yield was hardly nothing, 3-4% or something like that. They would get more with the money in the bank. But ideally,
like trophy buildings. They're like the best buildings on the best streets. It's just somewhere to put the money,
exactly.
not for return.
It's securing their wealth. They know our money is safe there. Whenever we want our money, we can get it back out. Because the bank can collapse, and what you're insured up to, I think, £80,000 in majority of the banks. So you lose all your money.
Yeah.
But with property, you won't with the trophy property.
Yeah, it's interesting you said the property market is unlikely to collapse, and I agree with that. And I also agree, I think interest rates base rate is going to continue to rise yet for maybe another 1 or 2 increases, but certainly will rise. And people haven't really started to feel the pain that the government really wants them to feel. So they slow down on the spending, and that starts bringing inflation back down and under control. And Rishi Sunak, when he was in charge of the economy as a chancellor during COVID, he was not going to let the economy collapse. He just poured whatever money we needed to into the economy to save the country, prevent it from collapsing. And now that he's running the country, I agree with you. I can't see a collapse happening particularly in the property market, because it's such a big sector and a big contributor into the economy.
It's true. These are the consequences of the borrowing and the printing of money that we saw during COVID. But it's not the first time a country has printed a lot of money.
Yes.
You've seen a lot of countries print a lot of money, and then they recover from it, and things just move on smoothly. Unless you have a country like Zimbabwe, where you have a president like Robert Mugabe. I think last I was reading about this guy, they printed so much money that if you had 100,000 Zimbabwe dollars, where you were a rich guy, after the printing of money, to buy an egg would cost you 1 billion Zimbabwean dollars. So that destroyed it. But places like Britain or United States of America, they have had these incidences take place so many times, printing, and then with the productivity, the market just comes back to normal. And I think this is what UK is going to see as well.
So the government has a big impact on the property market. And the time I've been involved in property, coming up to 17 years now, I've been involved in this space. Every year, it's like something new is happening, something is changing. People are worried about the government's going to introduce this new law, this is going to change. It's the end of property investing. We should finish and go, pack up and go home and do something else and forget about property. And like now, we've got changes happening. This year also, we've got a renters reform bill. How do you think the things that the government are doing now is also impacting the property market and the rental sector?
With the tenancy reform, which is not in place yet, as I understand, right? It's not that you're not going to be able to evict tenants. It's just that they've brought in mandatory grounds that you have the grounds to evict the tenant. Like maybe you want to sell the property or you want to move into the property. It's just that you have these grounds that you can get to evict the property, and there's some which are not mandatory. I guess it's just another gray area, because it's not like you can't evict the tenant. You can evict the tenant. So I don't think that itself is going to make an impact to the rental market or the property market. But it is just unfortunate. Although I do love the property market, I am not pleased with how the system works in favor of the tenant.
Yeah.
Because I can't just walk into a supermarket today, take whatever I want and walk out and tell the guy, hey, this is a civil matter. You wanna do something about it? Take me to court. It's stealing. So how is it fair for a tenant to take my property, live in it, appreciate the roof and shelter I've given them, and have everything in working order for them, and them not pay me my rent? That's my right. It's not a civil issue. Yeah. I think that's theft. And I'm not pleased with how that system works. But if I am in love with property, and if I do see the profit it can generate, it's just something I have to live with, and just make sure that I filter out to get the best of the best tenants, because our checks are so rigorous. Like, we do not let one rotten apple into our properties. Like, we have very high checks. There's some tenants who might have a CCJ and tell us we'll pay you 4 months up front. We'll say no, sorry. Because once the 4 months is over, then what?
Yeah, they've got a history of not paying.
Exactly. And that's habits, right? If he didn't pay before, he's not going to pay now. So we're so careful with that because we don't want someone to misuse the system like this and us face the consequences.
Yeah, very much we're the same like that. We're very thorough in terms of who we put in the property in the first place. And, I agree, things constantly changing. It is unfair in the way that the rules work. It's just heavily in the tenant's favour. If it was more fair, it'd be adequate. I'm not saying it should be in the favour of the landlord. It should just be more of a fair and balanced system. So we're going to have a register for bad landlords. That's fine, fair enough. What about a register for bad tenants?
So true.
Plenty of those exist.
That's true. They need to do that. Any tenants that defaulted before I have a CCJ, put them in there.
Yeah, so it should be a more fair system, I think. So let's talk about people that are looking to maybe get started in property because, if someone's watching this right now, I think it's now a good time. Should I be starting now? Should I be maybe not be doing this now? What would you say to somebody who's looking to get started in the property space, maybe in the early 20s, and what is it that they could consider as a strategy route?
Okay, there are two things then. One with experience, one without experience and without wealth. Someone having capital and no experience, it's all a different ball game. If somebody doesn't have the experience and doesn't have the wealth, they need to first invest in themselves. They need to learn all about property because you could try borrow money, buy a property, which is a sinking ship, and you didn't know you had to do a structural survey, you're going to be in big trouble. So I think for a person who doesn't have money and doesn't have experience, they need to educate themselves heavily. For a person who, let's say, has a bit of experience, coming back to the first guy, so educate themselves, get into things like rent to rent, where you don't have to put in a lot of capital. Get yourself learning into what property is, because it's not just about learning theoretically, but also practicing it practically, right? So learn all about it, try do rent to rents, get yourself in that shoes of being a landlord, what it's like, experience it, what's a good property, what's not a good property, whether that's rent to rent or deal sourcing that you do for other landlords. Get that kind of thing. For people with wealth and experience, then I think property development refurb scheme, that's the way through. But anyone really wanting to make good wealth, I think needs to have that sense of urgency and sense of really badly wanting it. I don't think property is a 9-to-5 job.
No.
I think it's a lifestyle. I think it's a very stressful, high demanding job. It requires a lot of your time. It requires a lot of you yourself to be there. So it takes a lot of out of one person. Like when my last job went wrong with the builders, their finishing was so ridiculous. I had to be there in a different city from early morning, say 7:30 till night 10, 11 p.m. and then drive back for 2 hours and then sleep late and then be there again for 7 a.m. managing laborers because I had to get the job done right. And laborers are in such a way that if I'm not watching them, then they're already chilling, having KFC and all that kind of stuff. And when it's their time, they want their money and they need to go.
Yeah.
And I'm there basically their assistant, trying to get all their supply for them and all of that. So it does take a lot out of one person. But I think with someone really, really wanting something and putting in their hard work, it will work. I'll tell you something very interesting that I came across a couple years ago when I was starting off, which really helps me. Is that our brain has this thing known as a reticular activating system, which is like a filter. It filters out all the information that you do not need, because if you were to get all that information, you'll go crazy.
Yeah, because there's lots going on around us all the time.
Exactly. So if I was to tell you, Saj, look around you and tell me where you see the color gray, for example, you say, oh, the carpet's gray, the walls are gray. But then I'll tell you, close your eyes and tell me what you see the color blue. You won't have an answer because you weren't looking out for blue.
Yes.
If you open your eyes and look for color blue, you'll see, oh, the podcast thing says blue. Oh, I'm wearing a blue shirt, and you'll spot that blue thing.
Yes. So because you're looking for it, because your focus is shifted.
Exactly. So someone wanting to really be successful in the property market, it's this thing they really need to want it. It's not just something, oh, I'll try and make it work. It's not that. You need to be all in. And it's also the idea about compound effect. They really need to always keep trying.
Yes.
Because if you look into the idea of compound effect, it's a philosophy that I live with, because I do experience times where things are going in literally the opposite direction of how I wanted to go, and things are going so wrong. But I live with this philosophy saying, if you have, let's say, 1 penny, and you double it every day, on the 30th day, you will have $5.3 million. You started with 1 penny.
Yes.
30th day, you'll have $5.3 million. But if you look back on if you look back on the 10th day, you'd only have about $10.
Yes.
On the 20th day, you'd have about $20,000. 30th day, you have 5.3 million. So when things are going against what I wanted to go towards, I remember this, and I keep telling myself, I'm there. I'm almost there. It's going to work. Keep trying, keep trying. Maybe I'm on the 15th day. I'll tell myself that to keep pushing. So first is surround yourself with all about property. And second thing, live with this philosophy about compound effect, because it will work. Just put in the work every day and it will work.
Yes. I think with the thing about working hard in property, sometimes people think it's very passive, that actually I'm just going to be getting an income and I don't need to do anything. And property can be passive, but generally the returns are much lower. The more effort you're prepared to put in, the more work you're willing to do, the bigger those rewards start becoming in property.
Absolutely.
The more risk you are taking, managed risk, the more headache you're taking on, the bigger problems you resolve, the more money you make.
True, unless you're an entrepreneur who's making $5 million from pharmaceuticals or whatsoever, and you just want 7% and you want a place to hide your money and like preserve it, then yeah, sure, you don't need to do anything.
Then it's passive.
Passive, buy a property, give it to a lettings agent, you can chill.
Yes.
If you want to make wealth through it, it takes work.
Yes. You got to really make money, you've got to work at it as well. And otherwise you'll get the long-term growth over time, which is fine. And some people might be happy with that, but you're starting with a reasonable amount of money in the first place.
Absolutely. I fully agree with that.
Okay. So with regards to your estate agency side of the business, how are you seeing the market at the moment? So we went last year, kind of mid last year, the market was crazy, was booming. You know, people were fighting with each other trying to buy property. And then it's kind of like started to ease off a little bit. How are you seeing things at the moment on this?
We have had some properties that we've been trying to sell, and these are not good investments for an investor to buy because the yields are so stupidly low. Mm-hmm. It's more of a homeowner market, properties that we have. We had, to give you an example, we had two properties literally on the same street.
Okay.
Right after lockdown, we had maybe 10, 12 viewings for it. Everyone was interested. We got a quick buyer. The property sold off. The next door, the plan was, because the property was owned by two siblings. Okay, the plan was first sell this, then we'll sell that. By the time that sale went through, it took a couple of months away. And then we started trying to sell this just recently, and we've had it not sell for the last maybe 6 months that we've been trying to sell it. We've had a viewing or two, but the guy's just not interested. And it was identical. Yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to interest rates, because the rates that they're getting with their lenders or whatsoever are just so high that maybe they cannot afford it, or they don't have the affordability for it. Yeah,
it seems like we're at that point in the market right now, which is an interesting point you make. Let's use some arbitrary numbers. Let's say that first property is 100,000 and you had 12 people view and you sold it straight away. Then when you relisted it, the other one next door, not relisted, listed it for the first time, the one next door, a few months later, market conditions have now changed. At £100,000, there's no real interest. Nobody wants to buy. And really, you could sell anything at any time as long as the price is right.
Yeah.
So if that price dropped, let's say dropped by 20%, you could probably sell it tomorrow.
Yeah, perhaps so. Yeah, absolutely.
So
if I sold it...
often it's the price. So what's happened is the market's moved, but the mindset hasn't moved.
Yeah.
So the sellers are still living in 2022 thinking, no, I sold that one for this much. This one's still going to be worth the same. Somebody will buy it. Whereas actually the market slowed down, there's fewer buyers, and he said interest rates have gone up, affordability has decreased. So that means really it's not worth that now anymore to buyers. And until the seller accepts that, that's not gonna shift.
True.
Because it's very unlikely somebody's gonna come along and say, I'll have it. It will probably stick for a while, then they'll start dropping the price and the market will have dropped as well. And then they'll probably be in a lot more pain. Unfortunately, that's probably what will happen. But we're at that point now where people are not really accepting that that's happening.
Yeah.
But maybe over the next few months, we'll start seeing people realizing actually the market is changing. Prices are coming down.
It's true. I think if you find a landlord whose back is against the wall, where they're negative, cash flow.
Yeah.
That is where you can get a deal for yourself and maybe save that person from the pain of having repossession or something like that. But if someone is cash on it, his back is not against the wall, I think they can weatherproof this storm and just wait it out for another maybe year and a half, and they will get that extra, say, 40 grand, 30 grand that they wanted, which they could have made through the rent. It's all about what opportunity you have elsewhere, because there is that where you're making profit, loss, and there's also that missed opportunity profit that you could have made. If it's, I remember you were in one of the videos I watched you speak to someone about whether they should buy a property to live in or they should rent. It's a similar story there. If I want to live in a hi-fi top-end property, let's say a good apartment, fully glass top to floor to ceiling windows, the rent's going to be, let's say, 2,500 a month or whatsoever. And if I was to buy that property, let's say in my company name and me rented from there, I would be making 4% rental income a year. I would rather take that same money, invested somewhere up north, cash and cash again, make 10% and mortgage it, that would be 25%, take that profit and pay the 4% a year, whatsoever it is, keep the balance as my profit.
Yes.
So it is that kind of thing in today's market as well. If your back is against the wall or not, maybe you can sell this and have a better deal that you can put your money towards and make double the profit, then why not?
Yes.
It's not about you taking a hit now. It's you will balance your books if you put that money elsewhere and make that profit.
Yeah, that just reminded me of, you get many companies sometimes, they don't own the buildings that they operate from, they rent them. And there could be, for example, a national company that hundreds and hundreds of retail outlets around the country, but they don't own any of them. They rent all of them because they want the cash to operate in their business, cash flow, whatever it might be. And whereas other companies, they own all their property, like your Lidl's, for example, they own every store. They own the building, so they invest in the property as well as the business side, so they have that benefit. And it's interesting the point that you were just making about if somebody doesn't have any debt on a property, i.e. there's no loan, there's no mortgage on it, and they're not going to be under as much pressure to sell unless they're trying to maybe use the money somewhere else. Whereas a landlord, and I've spoken to quite a few over the last few months as well, who have a regular, say, buy-to-let mortgage, those rates have gone up so much now that their rent, yes, has increased as well. And in some cases, not all landlords have increased the rents to the tenants to the full current market rent. But they're either making very little profit or, as you said, negative cash flow. They're losing money every month. And they're thinking, what on earth am I doing? Why am I even here holding these properties? And those landlords, I agree, many of those are trying to get out of the market now. They're thinking, you know what, let's just get out. And some of them have probably had the properties for a while. Let's say they had the properties for 10 years. They've probably made good capital growth anyway.
Yeah.
So although they're not making cash flow by getting rid of those properties, they get rid of the headache, get rid of the pain, but they're left with a lump sum of cash as well. So I think there is a good opportunity. I agree with helping those kind of landlords exit from the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not about taking advantage of him. You're helping them.
That's right.
And you're getting yourself a deal as well to
finding a solution. Yeah.
100%.
So what do you see as your core focus of the next year then?
So I'm blessed to be in a situation now where my lettings agency has amazing staff members. They're performing superb, like it's top end, and I get to supervise a great team. So I'm blessed to have that kind of thing now. It came from the idea of Tim Ferriss' book, I think, The 4-Hour Work Week, where I did try to implement that kind of situation of being so remote and running a business remotely. It did backfire on me significantly because I guess at that time I wasn't experienced enough, or I was trying to implement everything from that book, but the business was still a young baby that needed my supervision.
Yeah.
But with my letting agency, now it's 5 years, so it's not a small infant baby that I can leave it with a nanny. I can leave it with a manager to look at it, and I can just keep an eye on it saying, how's the nanny performing? So I'm blessed to have that running super well. My landlords are super happy. Everything's running super perfectly fine. So my attention is where the wealth comes in now. That is where my landlords are looked after, and I'm looked after with our own properties. The next effort is building our own generational wealth. So my whole time, from the time I wake up till the time I go to sleep, is trying to either find good opportunities to buy rundown properties or just land. Like we're doing a conversion literally down the road, a few minutes block away. We're converting a property into 9 studio flats there. So that is something that we can flip and make maybe 80, 100% profit on that, or just rent and also have 20% cash flow on it and have our money out within a short period of time, or refinance and pull all the money out. So this is where I'm focusing all my time now. It's just full on conversions, refurbishments, or developments. And that's what I think I want to see myself in for the next lifetime, hopefully. And maybe expand into different businesses as well. But I think property is going to be my big focus.
Excellent. Abbas is such an inspiring guy at such a young age. You're doing so many different things. How can people reach out and connect with you? What's the best way?
I think Instagram's a good way. If you go onto my Instagram, Abbas_Praidan, you can DM me. I'd always come back to you.
Excellent.
And hopefully we can all join venture, work together.
Fantastic. Abbas, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.